Welcome in, Brad from College SportsCast. Welcome, guys. We are here to do our Big Ten 2024 preview show. All right, guys, welcome back. It's College SportsCast. I've got John Hammonds on here with me. What's up, Hammonds?
What's up, man?
If he can hear me. All right, man. We are here to do our big preview show. We have been doing all of the power conferences. This is our Big Ten show. If you are with us on Facebook, you can help support us by sending stars, or you can subscribe to our page now for 99 cents a month. It does allow you to get your own subscribers page, and I do post things on it as well from time. So both of those help us earn money to make more content, and we would appreciate it, guys. If you're with us on anything other than Facebook, we're working towards that. YouTube, the Real Fresh channel, some of the things that we are on. So we are working towards those on YouTube and the Real Fresh channel as well. So all right, 18 teams to talk about here this year on the Big Ten show. These things keep expanding and getting bigger and bigger. These conferences do, and these shows get longer and longer and longer. So we're going to jump into it. The first one we're going to do, guys, is Illinois. We do these in alphabetical order. So the first one we're going to jump into is Illinois this time around. All right. So I'm going to start this by saying this with Illinois. Illinois has only had 4 winning seasons since 2001. 4.
And that was
winning season.
And that was the year they went to the Sugar Bowl and with Ron Turner, where they was 10-2.
Yes, 2001 they were 10-2. Ron Turner, that was the big year. They went 10-2, went to the Sugar Bowl in 2001. Since that season, Illinois has only had 4 winning seasons. Now, Brett Bielema has one of them in 2022. Last year, they kind of fell back a little bit. What do you think here about Illinois?
9, for me, it's like, 9 bowl appearances in the last 31 years to me is not a good thing. Like, Northwestern has gone to 11 bowl games in the last 16 years. And
I know. I mean, if you think about Illinois, and you think about like ground and pound and football stuff, but if you look at the last 20, 30 years, they really haven't been doing a whole lot in Champaign, to be quite honest with you. I mean, last year, John, they lost to Purdue badly. They lost double digits to Nebraska last year. I mean,
and here's my thing. Nobody's wanting you to go to the college football playoff. You know what I'm saying? Like, just go to a bowl game. Don't.
I'm sure their fans want them.
Yeah, like beat Purdue, like beat Nebraska. You can't lose to Nebraska, a team that has underwhelmed since 2001. I think that was the year that Nebraska football pretty much died when they lost to Colorado that year, and then they went on to lose to Miami in the national championship. But like, you can't continue to do the same things over and over again and expect results. Like, you've got to improve. One thing that he has improved on, Brett Bielema, he's improved the line play since he's been there. Now they went out and got some receivers. They got the Ole Miss receiver.
Let's dig let's dig into their offense, kind of quickly here. Even though I said they had a down season, kind of fell back, got beat by Purdue, got beat by double digits to Nebraska last year, they actually finished third in the Big Ten in overall offense.
Yeah, but that wasn't the problem.
Last year.
They had 23 turnovers last year. Turning the ball over hurt Illinois' offense more than anything. And to me, that's a problem. When you're turning the ball over consistently, you're putting your defense in a bad spot. You're making the defense having to work all the time, in which the defense wasn't bad either. They just could never put it together consistently. And I think that's been a major issue with Illinois in the last 3 to 4 years. And like I said, the line play, he's went out and got some guys. The line play improved. He got the wide receiver, the Franklin kid from Ole Miss. I think that will help a little bit. They did lose 2 of their top wide receivers from a year ago, which I think that will hurt a little bit. But they did go into the portal and they kind of dove in and got some guys to maybe help.
They are bringing back Pat Bryant, who led the team with 7 touchdowns on the wide receiver. And like you said, they went out and got some guys there in the wide receiver room as well. So, quarterback play. Do you see it being any better? Because, Altmaier last year had 10 interceptions, and he missed the last 3 games.
Could it get any worse? It's just it's got to be better than it was a year ago, and not even a year ago, maybe 2 to 3 years. Now, I will say they had the real good 2022 team. That was a pretty good team, but other than that, they've just been kind of subpar.
One of the winning seasons was 2022, and a whole lot of that was defense.
Yep, defense.
They had some pretty good mojo on defense in 2022. But last year they kind of slipped from that and didn't quite have the defense that they had in 2022. So, do you think linebackers, the safeties, and do you think they will be any better this year on defense?
I think they have to.
Can they come up with some?
Well, they lost 2 of their top guys in the secondary. Devin Witherspoon, which he was a top pick in the draft, and they lost Sidney Brown. But they did get Miles Scott back. They got Xavier Scott back. So those are some guys that can, help with that secondary. They do get Zachary Toby back. They get Tyler Strain, which they have experience. The biggest thing for me with Illinois a year ago was, they gave up almost 200 points. They gave up 24 points or more 9 times, and it wasn't nearly as good as it has been. And I think the defense is going to have to get their mojo back and
we're getting close, Will,
and getting back to playing Illinois football.
All right, so a key to the season for them this year. I know their offense has got to work some stuff out as far as the turnovers and stuff, but I think they have got to get the defense working again like they did in 2022 if they're going to have that kind of a season. I think they got to stop the run. They got to, they've got to get their defense stout again in that conference if they're going to have an 8-9 win season, and that's an if.
Yeah. Top transfer in. I'm gonna go Ole Miss wide receiver Jachari Franklin. Like when he was at UTSA, he might have been one of the biggest wide receiver threats in college football. I think he was the biggest get in the transfer portal, but I think Terrence Brooks, the cornerback junior, is most important. He's from Texas, all 12.
Terrence Brooks is another one.
Yeah, all Big 12.
Yeah.
I think he will help that defense and those guys in the back end.
Yeah, and key players. I mean, Xavier Scott, that safety that I was talking about, Miles Scott. They both play safety. They're juniors. I think that's two of their better players on this team. And then Luke Altmaier has got to come in. He was at Mississippi, transferred in there, and like I said last year, he had 10 interceptions and didn't play the last 3 games. So he needs to cut some of that out and play like he did when he was with Lane Kiffin a little bit more. So that's some of my key players there. What do you have for a key game?
I know that this is not going to be popular, but I think Eastern Illinois. And I say that because they got Nebraska, they got Kansas at home, which will be after the open date. But then they play Central Michigan at home. Then they play at Nebraska and at Penn State. Because if you can win that first game, the Eastern Illinois game, you can maybe set yourself up for a decent season. You beat Kansas, you pretty much go 2-0, and maybe Central Michigan. But Nebraska is going to be much improved this year. That's why I say you got to win these early key games.
I actually think it might be that Nebraska game, to be quite honest with you.
It's going to be because they miss Ohio State. Now they do play Oregon. They play at Penn State, which is going to be a tough game. But at the same time, I think you got to win that early. See, here's my thing. You got to win the early parts of the schedule, because when you get towards the back end, there's certain games where if you don't win those early games, you're not going to get to a bowl game. And that's where I feel like Illinois has to.
I mean, I agree. Let's look at their schedule real quick. They start out with Eastern Illinois open date, home against Kansas, Central Michigan at home, at Nebraska, at Penn State, open date. Then they get Purdue at home, Michigan at home, at Oregon, Minnesota at home, open date. They have 3 open dates. All right. Anyway, Michigan State at home, at Rutgers, and at Northwestern. So that's a look at their schedule. They are missing Ohio State, USC, Washington, Wisconsin, a few teams out of the Big Ten that they are missing on that schedule. I have their over and under set at 6 wins. Do you think they can make a bowl game and get to 6 wins?
I think they can.
I mean,
I think they
likely wins is probably Central Michigan, Eastern Illinois.
Then you got the 50-50 games.
Purdue at home.
The Minnesota, I think it's at home. You're going to have to win a few on the road. You're going to have to probably go to Nebraska. You're probably going to have to go to Purdue. Well, no, Purdue's at home. You're probably going to have to get that Michigan State game, which Michigan State's going to be much improved. They're going to have to steal a couple of those road games, I think, to get to a bowl game.
So, do you think they fall short? Do you think they're 5, or do you think they can get to this 6?
I think it all depends. I think it all depends on if they can steal one of those road games and get that 6 win. But I'm going to give the over and under for 6. I think they get to a bowl game, but I just don't think that's good enough for Illinois. I just don't. Especially the last 3 years.
All right. We're gonna move on to Indiana. Indiana is under a new coach, and let's just say they are pretty much James Madison now. So they hired James Madison's coach, and he is in his season, of course, and they've got quite a few James Madison transfers as well from that team last year. So, Indiana is another team, just to give you, they have 3 winning seasons in the last 30 years. 3 in the last 30 years. Can this guy get it done at Indiana? I mean, James took James Madison from 2A and brought them up, and they had a great year last year. Can this guy get it done? I mean, not this year, but can he get it done?
I think he can. He took James Madison to 19-4 over the past 2 years, and he finished last year ranked.
Yeah.
And now you got to think though, they're going from that league to the Big Ten,
right,
which is a little bit difficulty.
Yeah.
But I feel like
Absolutely.
I feel like this guy's earned the benefit of the doubt. I think he's a good coach.
Kurt,
for me, Indiana is not a bottom feeder.
I'm not sure how he pronounces his last name, but
Signetti.
I think it's.
I don't think Indiana's a bottom feeder because you got to look back. A couple years back, they beat Penn State during the COVID year. They won some key games. They had a couple teams in the top.
One of their winning seasons was the COVID
top
year.
3 in the Big Ten. They had a couple of the top 3 teams in the Big Ten on the ropes. And let's not forget that they used to have Michael Penix Jr. that eventually went to Washington and played for a national championship. So I look at these other teams and I think, well, you know what? They're bottom feeders, but I don't look at Indiana that way. I think Indiana has always had a stable program, even in the days when they had Antoine Randall. They had a bunch of guys that were really good football players. Alex Smith back in the day at running back. So I think this is an underrated team that everybody's kind of not really talking about, and I think they can do some things.
So James Madison's leading receiver, Elijah Surratt, 82 catches, almost 1,200 yards, had 8 scores, is there. Their top tight end, Zach Horton, is there. I mean, they had 26 catches, 8 touchdowns last season, the tight end did. I mean, they brought over some pieces from James Madison. And they got a really good quarterback as well.
The thing that
they brought in a good quarterback.
The thing that gets me is, they lost to Illinois last year, Michigan State, Purdue by like a total of 8 or 9 points. Lost to a really good Louisville team by 7. You win 3 or 4 of those games, and you're probably going to a bowl game. It's sort of like if you did that, and if you did this,
Curtis Rourke is the quarterback.
Yeah. You would have had a little bit more chances to do some things. And people don't realize this. They have an offensive coordinator named Mike Shanahan, and it's not the same Mike Shanahan.
No, not Mike Shanahan.
Not that Mike Shanahan.
But his name
is. Yeah, that's his name. So
they brought in 3 probably new starters on the offensive line in the transfer portal as well. So just to talk about a couple of them are from James Madison. So it's going to be interesting to see if these guys who were like 11-1 last year can come into the Big Ten and do anything, to make Indiana competitive, I guess you could say.
Well,
because
and you look at the defensive side, like last year, James Madison
was 5th in the James Madison was 5th in the nation.
Yeah, they was number 1
against
in the
run,
country in tackles for loss. So they're going to get some guys in there that get some pressure. James Carpenter,
and 6th in sacks.
Yeah, and James Carpenter was one of those guys. He was one of their best tackles. And I think he led the country in tackles. No. I was wrong on that. I think he was in the top 10 or 15. But Mikael Kamara was a top rusher.
Sun Belt.
He was. CJ West, the 315-pound guy. So, but I think their biggest strength is in the secondary. D'Angelo Pons might be one of the best cornerbacks in the country that nobody really has mentioned as of late. Sean Asbury will play safety. He's from Old Dominion. So they're going to have some guys, step up in that secondary and make some noise.
I mean, they revamped everything. New coach, lots and lots of new players here. So, I mean, this one's they're kind of hard to judge. And a lot of these guys are coming from smaller James Madison and Old Dominion and MAC schools. And, so it's hard to judge exactly what this team is going to do in the Big Ten. I mean, but with a new coach, new system, they are upping what they have been the last few years, to be quite honest, because they've struggled big time. So
my key to the season, I'd have to say stop the run. This is more about Indiana than it is. More about James Madison than I think, because you can do all that and whatnot where you was at last year, but everything started with stopping the run at James Madison. That was the idea. That was the identity.
And they did pretty good job at Madison. Right.
Now, they only allowed, I think, more than 100 rushing yards, but they did have that game against Air Force where they just got ripped apart. And that was unfortunate because that was at the point where the coaching towards the end of the year. So I think that is the biggest key to me for the season.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that.
Stopping the run and getting it together.
So who's some of your key players here? I mean, I already mentioned Curtis Rourke coming in.
I think Curtis Rourke is the Ohio transfer. I think he's a really mobile guy, talented. He's a pro prospect.
Right.
I don't think he would be. I think he would be good at anywhere you put him at. Not just Indiana.
James Carpenter, Elijah Surratt, some of these that we already Camara
kind of went over.
Yeah, are some of the key players there. All right, key game.
I think it's Maryland because you got FIU, you got Western Illinois. You play at UCLA early. You play Charlotte, which Charlotte's going to be much improved. They play Maryland at home, at Northwestern, open date, Nebraska at home, Washington at home, at Michigan State.
The Maryland game is at home too.
Yeah, at Michigan State, Michigan at home, open date. Then they go to Ohio State, and then they play the annual rivalry game, Purdue. I think it's the Maryland game because you win that game, you're 5-0 going to Northwestern, and you pretty much change the directory of the season. And
you got to win at UCLA to be 5-0.
Well, UCLA
to be 5-0.
Well, UCLA is going to be tough too, but I think that Maryland game is to me is the kicker. I think because I think that's what separates you having a really good year or not. Because
I've got their win total set at 5.5, John. 5.5. So if they're under, they don't go bowling. If they're over, they do go bowling. So you already kind of went through their schedule.
I got them at 7.
Where do you think you see?
I got them at 7. I think.
You think they can get to 7?
I think they're going to have a bounce back year. I do. I do. I think he's going to bring his identity to Indiana.
They've only had 3 in 30 years.
They haven't, and I think this is the year that they're going to. Now, I'm not going to say they're going to go to the Big Ten championship and tear it up. I'm just saying, I think they're going to be much improved, and they're going to get back to respectability with this new coach from James Madison.
Okay. All right, we are going to move on to Iowa. And the first thing I want to say about Iowa is this. We all make fun and talk about the offense at Iowa. And we make jokes and all this stuff. And we talk about, them and have a little fun with them. But, John, How many teams would love to have 10-win seasons almost every year? How many power conference teams would love to have 10-win seasons almost every single year? I mean,
Well,
for the last 5 years, they've won 10 games.
And another key fact that nobody knows is they've been in 2 of the last 3 Big Ten championships.
Exactly. They've been in 2 of the last 3 Big Ten championships. Now, that was divisions. I get it. And there's no longer divisions. But where they are now.
And I'll even go as far as saying this, and I know Iowa fans will like this one. Iowa State's never had a double-digit win season. Their rival.
Yeah. I know.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I shot some pepper sprays at Iowa State Cyclones. So,
I mean, listen, I've made fun of their offense too, winning games 7-6 and stuff. I'm not going to sit here and act like I haven't done it as well. I have, but in all reality, there are 30 power conference teams who would love to win 10 games a year. Because I'm going to be honest with you, John, now that it's a 12-team playoff, you get 10 wins and you're going to get into the college football playoff half the time, at least.
It'll be a lot easier now that you can do it.
Yeah.
The offense, to me, the offense is going to score. They're going to try to do the forward pass. I make a joke about it all the time, but I mean, they brought in Tim Lester. He's the new offensive coordinator. I think he'll get it going.
They did bring in Tim Lester, and they also have Cade McNamara coming back from injury.
Well, and they did get Northwestern transfer Brendan Sullivan. I think he's the backup to McNamara. If he goes down, I think they got a little extra benefit of having him in the quarterback room. Luke Lachey is going to be one of their targets. The tight end, I think he has a really chance to emerge at Iowa.
One of the top tight ends in the country, to be honest. I think so.
The Iowa offensive line, to me, has always been the biggest thing, but it just hasn't been the last couple of years. It's just not been Iowa football. They get Connor Colby, Logan Jones, but to me, the pass protection has got to be a little bit better. You can't let a lot of these teams, like these FCS teams, come into your building and dominate you up front, like some of these teams have done recently. The 3-2 game a year ago. Was it a year ago? Maybe 2 years ago? It was a year ago, wasn't it? It was last year. The 3-2 game. It was 2 years ago. The 3-2 game, put some points on the board. Improve your line, and I think they'll do that this year.
All right, so the Iowa defense is going to be top. They're always top in the country. I mean, they're almost always in the top 10 just about every single year. It seems like the Iowa defense finished 7th in the nation last year. I mean, and they do this almost every single year. Now, I will say this. I don't think their pass rush was quite as good last year as they usually are. So, maybe they can improve on that this year with their pass rush. But outside of that, I mean,
I think they're
really good.
Their linebacker
may be one of the best in the country.
Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson, they don't miss. They're probably the best. To me, they're probably the best linebacker tandem in the Big Ten. I was always been predicated on stopping the run, playing really good press coverage, playing good coverage in the back end with their secondary. They've had a few top guys in the secondary go in the top rounds in the NFL draft.
And
So
linebackers,
they're not limited. So they're not limited defensively. If their offense could keep them in rhythm and they can score, basically.
I mean, honestly, that's how they've done it. That's how they win 10 games and have, very little offense.
And the defense could, maybe
on top of that, in many years, John, their defense scores points for them. They're opportunistic, and they score touchdowns. They actually score points for them a lot.
They do.
The defense
and I think if Iowa scores more, I'm not saying more like 14, 21 points. I'm saying if they give them a chance to let the defense do their thing, I think Iowa would have a lot more chance at winning more games. And the offense to me is
that's my key to the season. My key to the season is this: they've got to convert some third downs on offense.
Yeah,
I mean, they wasn't even 30% last year.
It was 29 last year.
Yeah. I said they wasn't even 30% on converting third downs last year. So, converting third downs and keeping their offense on the field and not tiring out that defense quite so much, they've got to improve converting on third downs.
My key player, I feel like it's K. McNamara. I think he's got to stay healthy. I think he's got to, stay upright. I don't think you just got to stay healthy for me, for Iowa to have a really good year. And they're going to, with
Brendan
him,
Sullivan could possibly step in, but they need McNamara to do something.
They do. That to me, that's their key to the year. I think to the season, in my opinion.
All right. So key game.
I think it's the Washington game.
I'll tell you which one I think it is. I've got Washington October the 12th.
Mm-hmm.
Washington October the 12th. That's what I have. Now, they play other games that are important as well, but that game is at home. And taking a look at their schedule, just to give you a little rundown here of their schedule, they start out with Illinois State at home, Iowa State at home in the rivalry, Troy at home, at Minnesota, open date, Ohio State, Washington at home, which is the game I mentioned, at Michigan State, Northwestern at home, Wisconsin at home, at UCLA, open date, at Maryland, and then they finish Nebraska at home. A few teams that they miss Michigan, Oregon, Penn State, USC. Their schedule, if things go right and they figure out a little bit of offense, John, could this team sneak into the college football playoff? I'm just throwing it out there, guys. They've won 10 for the last 5, at least 10 for the last 5 years. Now, I did set their win total at 8.5, but I don't think it's unrealistic to say that this team couldn't get to 10 wins. And at 10-2, could they sneak into the college football playoff? I'm just saying. I know nobody is picking them, including myself. I did not pick them either.
I think it all boils down to that Washington game to me, because in between there you play Ohio State, and which you got. I think you got.
Let's be honest. That's probably their only likely loss is the Ohio State game at Ohio State.
Well, and the at Minnesota game is not it's not tough, but it's Even in the Big Ten, it's challenging going on the road. Anytime you go on the road, it's challenging. So, but I do think they win that game. It's possible. I still think
I'm going to call them at 9 wins, and that they don't get in. But I'm just saying it's possible that this team could sneak in because they don't get Penn State, they don't have Michigan, they don't have USC, they don't have Oregon.
If we're being fair, I think the Ohio State game's pretty key too in that regard, because you don't want to lose Washington and that game.
I picked the Washington game because I think the Ohio State's a likely loss, and that Washington game's home. If they can get that game, I think they might have a chance at 10 wins.
But another thing on that, they do get Ohio State at home, so in Happy Valley. So that's we are Penn State. Na, 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 na.
All right, so we're going to move on to Maryland. Maryland is our next team that we're going to talk about. And Maryland, unlike these other teams that I just mentioned, 3 years in a row have had winning seasons.
They have
3 years in a row. Now they have a new coach, but they are coming off of 3 years in a row of winning seasons. So, John, first-year coach here. I mean, do you think they have some? I mean, I feel like they have a few pieces to maybe back up another winning season. I'm not saying they're going to make a ton of noise here, but I think they could maybe have a winning season. What do you think?
First-year coach. Did you just say Mike Losley's been there 3 years?
Okay, I'm sorry. I was thinking they changed coaches.
Oh no, you had me. You was thinking about Randy Edsall when he was there. You just had me confused for a minute. Yeah. I think it's possible.
Yeah.
You know, they got enough experience to get there. The schedule to me isn't all that bad, and we'll get to that. I think, you know, offensively, you know, last year they scored the most points since 2010. Tungaloa is gone. Billy Edwards Jr. is probably going to be
the brother.
Will most likely be the new quarterback. Now, MJ Morris from NC State, he's the transfer. He's going to be pushing for that job, I think. The receiving core is loaded. Kyle Felton, Caden Prather. There's plenty of depth in that wide receiver room to make some noise with the right quarterback. And that's not to mention the offensive line, because they went totally berserk on the offensive line with the portal. You know, they got the Kyle Long, Connor Fagan.
They're trying to get a better offensive line.
They got Josh Kaltenberger from Purdue. They're at center. The depth is kind of young, but they're very inexperienced. But I think, you know, that'll help along the way in growing in these games. You know, last year the running game just really didn't do what I thought they would do at Maryland. But they got good backs. You know, they got Roman Hemby back, Kobe McDonald. So I want the running game to get back to where it needs to be.
That's fair enough. On the defensive side of the ball, I mean, they did allow fewer than 300 points last year for the first time since 2010. So they had some moments, but then they also had moments where, you know, it seems like they couldn't stop anybody either. So, but I do think it was a little better last year than what they had been on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, and they created I think 17 turnovers. So they was doing some good things too. So for me, that's the key to my Maryland season.
The linebackers have some experience, are coming back. On this team, and you're right, they had 17 interceptions last year, a slew of big plays, on the defensive side of the ball. So, if they could continue that, and like I said, I mean, they had their moments last year. They flashed some moments on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, I mean, everybody cares about
one of my keys, to be honest.
Well, everybody
is keep taking the ball away.
Everybody wants to create turnovers, but if you're a team like Maryland, your margin of error is really low against decent Big Ten teams, which you gotta make plays when they count. And I think that needs to happen for Maryland to, I think, have success this season.
Who do you have as a key player?
I think it's, the quarterback position. There's two there, I think. Billy Edwards Jr., MJ Morris.
Yep.
Maryland's coming off of 3 straight 3,000-yard passing years since not getting that in 2013. The offense, to me, has to still be explosive, and I think that starts up front with the quarterback play with either the transfer from NC State or Billy Edwards Jr., which he stepped in the last 2 years and did a pretty good job backing up Tagovailoa.
Right. All right. Key game for Maryland.
That's tough because in that middle they got.
I'll take a quick look at their schedule, and then you tell me what you think their key game is here after I take a look at the schedule here. But they start at home against UConn, Michigan State at home, at Virginia, Villanova, at Indiana, open date, Northwestern at home, USC at home, at Minnesota, open date, at Oregon, Rutgers at home, Iowa at home, and at Penn State is how they close the year. They do miss Michigan, Ohio State, Washington, Nebraska, Wisconsin. So there's a few teams that they miss. Key game for me out of this, I mean, you could say the Michigan State or Northwestern game at home, but I'm going to say at Virginia because Virginia shouldn't be that great. And you can't go to Virginia and lose at Virginia.
I think that's fair, but I think the Northwestern game is crucial because if you get that game, you're 6-0 with a USC team coming in, and you might have a special season on the horizon. And USC bringing in
win that Virginia game.
Well, and USC coming in. Well, and yeah, I know you got to go to Indiana, which is tough because they'll be much improved, like we just talked. But I still think that Northwestern game's key because I think they're, you go into that USC game and you're 6-0, and USC coming in, their first year in the Big Ten, big opportunity to do something on national television. Like you could have a special year.
Okay, so I'm gonna raise the bar here at Maryland. I'm going 7.5 wins.
I'll go even higher. I'm gonna go 8 because I think there's 8 wins on the schedule for them to get at least a decent bowl game.
It's gonna be telling here early with some of these games. The Michigan State game at Virginia. It's going to be pretty telling here early, I think, for them to be able to get 8 wins. So
You got to win those.
We'll see.
You got to win the freebie games. Like you can't just go in thinking you're going to win those games and lose them.
All right, we're going to get to the big house. We're going to the big house.
Are you going to let me go? Are you going to let me go first? Because I told you I was going to say my.
Yeah, so we're going to the big house here. So, all right, go on. We're going we're in Michigan.
I'm going to give you my hot take.
And
then I'm going to let Brad kind of go off from there. Michigan does not repeat as champions, and they do not get back to the college football playoff.
To be honest with you, John, I'm with you. I have picked my preseason college football playoff teams. I do have them as honorable mention on the outside looking in. I just do not think offensive-wise. I think defensively this team still has some star power.
Very, very good.
Outside of Donovan Edwards at the running back position, I think there's some question marks on the offensive side of the ball here.
Quarterback's got some questions.
Michigan, Harbaugh had kind of built this team up. He had some question marks, and then about 3 years ago, he started beating Ohio State and getting there and kind of gradually got to where they went and won the title last year. Of course, he moves on to I almost said San Diego Chargers. Los Angeles Chargers.
Chargers.
I'm an old school guy. I still think of them as San Diego. I'm sorry. But Chargers, he moved on to the Chargers in the NFL. And I think there's some question marks here around their new coach. What do you think? I mean, he's a new coach outside of filling in for Harbaugh a few times last year.
And I think there's question marks at, like you said, offensive line, quarterback play. Now, there's no denying with this Michigan team they have probably the best running back in the country lining up in the backfield for them. And that's not to slight the other ones like Ollie Edwards and all those that are really good. But I feel like Donovan Edwards is probably the best running back in the country. And I think they'll do good with that. But for me, Michigan last year won with defense and very good quarterback play with J.J. McCarthy. And I think that's going to take a step down. I think Michigan is more near the pack than they are with the contenders. And I know that's a hot take, and I know people's going to say, well, you don't think Michigan can do this. They play 3 of the top 4 preseason top 25 teams. They played Texas right out of the gate at home.
We're going to find out pretty quick with Texas. Yeah.
You're going to find out quick for this Michigan.
Listen, guys, the offensive line is starting over basically on this offense. So we're talking about the offense. I mean, that's a huge blow to any offense when you are replacing your offensive line. And when you have that plus the quarterback, and there's some question marks here at the quarterback, I feel like the running game will be there. More than likely, the running game with Donovan Edwards is still going to be there. Mullings behind him. I mean, the running game is probably still going to be there. Now, and I say probably because of the offensive line, not because of the backs. The backs are good, but when you're replacing that offensive line, you just never know. I mean, so all of that worked perfectly last year. And a lot of that is gone. So that's where I'm at with them. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, John, they're still really, really stout on the defensive side of the ball.
I mean, when you got guys like Will Johnson at cornerback, you got Mason Graham, you got Kenneth Grant, you got Josiah Stewart at linebacker, you got Makari Page at safety, Ernest Hausman at linebacker. That's not even to mention Rod Moore at safety, which he was injured. Like, right. Michigan's defense is legit. Like, they're good.
I mean, they may have the best secondary in the country.
They do, and that's why I say the key player for them is, Mason Graham up front. I think he's going to guide that team. He's going to be a veteran leadership on that team. I think that front four to me is probably the best in the country, and that's why I say
the secondary is that good as well.
And that's why I say the key of the season is
Will Johnson. Will Johnson might be the best cornerback in the game, and I know there's a guy out west named Travis Hunter. I'm fully aware of that, and Hunter's great. I'm not saying he's not. I said maybe he may wind up being the best cornerback in the country.
Might be the best cornerback off the board when it comes to the pros next year, because I mean, if you look at his intangibles, what he does, how he changes the game. Last year he changed 2 or 3 games for Michigan, changed the outcome of the games. Like he's the real deal. And Michigan's defense is always going to be there. And that's why I think the key of the season is their offense. Like, now I'm going to say this. Their schedule sets up good for them.
We'll get to that. We'll talk about the schedule here.
That's part of what my key of the season is. And like you said, we'll get to it. But it sets up good for them to at least challenge for the playoff.
My key to the season is replacing J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah.
I think that's the key to this season.
I think Orgy will.
Because J.J. McCarthy ran this offense so smoothly last year, and losing him and not really having any experience and knowing exactly who's going to step in and that kind of stuff. I mean, it could be, they've had a competition, it could be dicey here on the offensive side of the ball. So my key is running the offense and replacing J.J. McCarthy. That's my key.
I think another thing too, Orgy will be able to run the ball a bit more than J.J. McCarthy. He'll be able to do a little bit more things with his leg.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he will, but McCarthy was the key that started the engine last year for this.
Well, and you had one of the best defenses. You had one of the best defenses in the country behind him. So,
right. Who's your key players on this Michigan team? I know we've already mentioned a bunch of them.
I mentioned a bunch, and I think Will John is one. Mason Graham. There's Will a few Johnson.
On defense. Yeah.
So, my key game.
Right. Key game.
Has to be Texas. I know it's early, but you win that game.
Second game of the year.
There's a good chance you could go 8-0 the rest of the way. That's including games at Washington, and then they play Oregon at the back end. Their schedule is not that bad. Like it's set up really good for them. I just think there's a couple games in there where you need to really win those.
All right. So let's look at their schedule real quick. And they start out, it's at home, but Fresno State is not going to be a huge slouch here to start the season off. And then they get Texas at home. So those 2 home games to start out are pretty opening, I think both of them are.
And then they get Arkansas State.
Then you get Arkansas State at home, and then USC at home. So And then Minnesota at home. They play 5 straight home games to start the year off. Then at Washington, open date, at Illinois, Michigan State at home, Oregon at home, at Indiana, Northwestern at home, and then they finish at Ohio State. But I want to add something here when we're looking at this schedule. Their away games, okay, are at Illinois, at Washington, at Indiana, and at Ohio State. Everything else is at home. They get Washington, Ohio State, and Indiana and Illinois. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So my over and under, I have it set at 9. That's what I have it set at.
That's pretty much where I have mine. I'm not really. Now I know their schedule is favorable, but there's some home games in there where you're going to have to really play to win, and you really have to want to make plays to win those games. And where we have the question mark.
We're at the big house.
Yeah,
I called this at the big house when we started this. I didn't say Michigan. I said we're at the big house, and the reason why I said that is because they get Texas at home, they get USC at home, they get Oregon at home. I mean, they get Fresno State at home. They get, you know what I mean? Like, so they are, Michigan State is at home, their rival. You know, so they play quite a few big games at the big house this year. I've got them at 9, and I do think at 9 that they miss the playoffs.
Yep.
I think they're right there, but I think they miss the playoffs. All right, then we're going to Michigan State.
I thought it was Minnesota.
Michigan State.
Oh, Michigan State. That's right.
It's Michigan State. Michigan State does have a new coach. I had in my mind mixed up a few minutes ago, but Michigan State does have a new coach. What do you think about Michigan State here? They bring over Oregon State's coach, who had done a really, really good job at Oregon State.
This group, to me, is the toughest to digest because they had that one good year, and then they just kind of fell out.
My thing is, you know, with their new coach this year, I think their coach is a good coach. I mean, he done a really good job at Oregon State. Smith, isn't that his last name? I'm trying to think of his last name.
Jonathan Smith. Yeah.
Jonathan Smith, yeah. The Oregon State coach, and he done a really good job over there, turning that program to a 9 or 10 win season the last couple of years. I think I foresee him getting this Michigan State team going. Now, I'm not so sure that he's going to get to 9 or 10 wins this year in the first year or nothing, but I think that he'll get this team going. I really do.
Well, he has to, you know, offensively. They brought in Tanner Miller from Oregon. He's the all-star center for he was at Oregon State a year ago. They got the offensive guard from Illinois, Andrew Dennis. I feel like will make a big impact. To me, the line wasn't bad last year, but the running game was just really horrible. And the passing could not make up for what was going on on the line and the running game. And it was just really, really bad. Now they did get an offensive coordinator, Brian Lindgren. You know, Oregon State last year, their offense wasn't really dominant, but they was good enough to win. And I think that's where this is going to come into play with Michigan State. I think they're going to be good, which they –
I mean, we got to talk about Aiden Childs. if we're on offense here, I mean, he comes over from Oregon State with his coach. He was the backup to DJ last year and played some. Aiden Childs. He's a young guy coming in, highly touted, and going to be coming in here to play quarterback for them, and has been under Jonathan Smith's system. So he knows the system coming in. I think that's going to be a huge plus as well.
One, I think adding Jack Velling, the tight end from Oregon State, will be a big thing. I think he'll be big all 10, big all Big Ten. They get back Montorio Foster, Jerron Glover's back, so they'll be interesting to watch on the offensive side of the ball.
I think you're going to see a lot of improvement with this Michigan State team where they've been the last 2 years under Mel Cook.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're going to see a lot of improvement. I love the hire here and bringing guys over. So from Oregon State on the defense side of the ball, the defense, just to be honest with you, has been atrocious the last couple of years. Actually, even the year that they won some games, it was bad. It's just been atrocious under Mel Tucker. There's no other way around it but to say that. Washington last year had 713 yards against Michigan State defense in East Lansing.
At Michigan State, yeah. So
in East Lansing, 713 yards.
Yeah.
Ohio State and Penn State combined for over 1,100 yards against this team.
It was pretty bad last year.
So defense, this year, new coach, Jonathan Smith, they brought in 7 new options in the transfer portal. 7 of the top 9 options for the front 7 are new guys.
Yep.
So, I mean, we will see exactly how that turns out. I mean, they got a bunch of new guys in here. The secondary is a bit more homegrown. They've been around for a little while. A few of them have in the secondary on this team. But the front 7 is basically going to be all new. So we will see if Jonathan Smith can get this defense doing anything and not getting rolled over, steamrolled by good teams like they did last year. That's basically what they did.
My key to the year is get first downs. I'm not saying that it's going to be any better under Jonathan Smith, but last year I think Oregon had a good ground game. They had that Martinez. He went to Miami.
Yeah,
and they had a decent passing attack, but they had a hard time at moving the ball at times. They was only like 38%, I think, on third down conversions. But I think overall this will be a better situation at Michigan State with Jonathan Smith moving over here and moving his offense the way he runs it, and hopefully they'll do better at getting third downs.
Absolutely a positive. I think you give him 2-3 years, I think he'll have them rolling.
Yeah, I do too.
I think he was a great hire. I really do, to pull him from Oregon State. And so a key player here, Childs is going to be a key player here for sure. But I've got Foster, a senior wide receiver here.
I think that's why. I think the reason I would pick that one is because you lose Keon Coleman to the NFL, the Bills, and then you lose Jaden Reed. You lose 2 of the top big time threats that you have on the slot and the wide guys, and you need somebody to step up in the wide receiver room. Yeah, and I think he can do that.
Yeah. All right, key game.
I think it's the at Maryland game because their schedule sets up. They play Fort Atlantic first, at Maryland, Prairie View A&M, at Boston College, Ohio State, at Oregon, open date, Iowa, at Michigan, Indiana, open day, at Illinois, Purdue, and Rutgers. Now, listen, this schedule is not like horrific, but there's spots in there where they get certain home games that they're going to have to play hard to win. The Ohio State game, which I don't expect them to beat Ohio State at home, but crazier things have happened. They play Iowa at home, and then Indiana's going to be much improved.
So you've got the Maryland game at Maryland as a
I
key
do
game
because you play Fort Atlantic first, then you play Prairie View, and then you play at Boston College, Ohio State, and Oregon. And I think you lose that Maryland game, you might not get a bowl.
Let's be honest. Ohio State at Oregon open date, and then Iowa, and then at Michigan. That is 4 straight games. There's an open date. That's 4 straight games. That's going to be pretty tough for them to.
But to be honest, to be fair, I think 2 or 3 of those games, with including Indiana, are home games. So you gotta at least steal one of those. That's why I say the Maryland game to me is crucial, because if you don't win the Maryland game,
that 4-game stretch, man, that's tough. Now
it is.
I'm not sure you can get a win in that 4-game stretch. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. That's a pretty tough 4-game stretch, if you ask me.
Yeah.
For them, I've got their over and under. I got their wins set. I'm going to do it at 6.5.
That's where I got them.
So that means if they go, if they get to 7, that's a winning season bowl game here for first-year head coach Jonathan Smith. And, they could possibly be 6-6, but I do think that this Michigan State team will be going bowling at the end of the year.
Yeah, I do too. I think they'll be there.
All right, now we're going to Minnesota.
Yep.
We're going to talk about the Golden Gophers and PJ Flack.
Row the boat, baby.
Row the boat. That's right. All right. Now, here's my thing about PJ Flack. A few years ago, it looked like he was really doing well. It's kind of slid back a little bit the last year or two.
Mm-hmm.
Are they ready to rebound and get back up where the 9-4 teams, are they ready to get back there, or what do you think? Where do you think they are? I think they didn't have a quarterback last year. Tanner had been there for a long time.
Listen, man, the Minnesota's year last year was odd. They gave up a win against Northwestern. They beat Iowa for the first time in quite a while.
Yeah.
They survived Nebraska. They lost to Wisconsin. And they had a regular losing season, and they still got to a bowl game because they was 5-7 because I think of the academic progress thing.
Yeah,
so they ended up to go to a bowl game. So
yeah,
and then you had all the rumors going around that PJ Fleck was going to UCLA, and that affects recruiting. And after that, he crushed the transfer portal. They landed the All-American passer from the SCS level. Max Brosmer. If nobody knows who that guy is, he was the star for New Hampshire. Probably one of the best quarterbacks on the market, I think.
Well, let's be honest. Tanner, the quarterback he had for several years that won a lot of games with, he wasn't a highly touted guy either.
Yeah, and the main thing to me, their top 4 wide receivers are gone. The only truly one that's back is Elijah Spencer, and he only had 9 catches last year.
Right.
It won't be
the running back room is not bare though.
No, it's not.
And they do run the ball pretty heavy up there, so I mean, they'll probably be doing a lot of that. But
to me, Darius Taylor's the big key for that. Now they get Marcus Major. They got him from Oklahoma. I think they got Jaron Mangham from Michigan State. They can't just now focus on the run. They have to focus on the pass and the run. So,
yeah. All right, defense. On the defensive side of the ball, I mean, kind of so-so. I mean, kind of middle of the pack. So-so, basically. I
think losing Tyler Nubin hurt a little bit. He went to the New York Giants. Their safety. I think that'll hurt them, but Minnesota always has good defensive backs. Always has. They get their leading tackler back, Jack Henderson. Justin Wally will be back. So they always have tough, gritty guys in the backfield to make offenses honest.
The linebacking core, Cody Lindenberg, Devin Williams, Maverick Baranowski. Maybe I said that right. So on the defensive side of the ball. All right, so keys the season for the Gophers.
Convert
third downs.
I think
I know I've seen that a couple of times.
Well, I think it is because you gotta be consistent on offense, and they just wasn't consistent enough last year.
All right, so key players. Who do you have as a key player here? Is it that quarterback?
I think it's the quarterback. I just think the quarterback play has to improve. A year ago, it just did not. I think he brings a kind of new
Max Brosmer or something like that's his name.
Brosmer, yeah. He brings a new dynamic to the offense, and I think he'll step in and he'll do a really good job for them.
All right, key game.
That's tough because I'm going to go through their schedule here.
They think it's Iowa.
Yeah. They play North Carolina at home, Rhode Island at home, Nevada at home, Iowa at home, at Michigan, USC at home, at UCLA, play open date. Well, they don't play open date. They have an open date. Then they play Maryland at home, at Illinois, at Rutgers, open date home Penn State. That's right. And then they play at Wisconsin. Now, they do miss Ohio State and they miss Oregon and Washington. But there's a part in there where it gets a little nasty. Iowa, at Michigan, USC, and at UCLA. And that's right out of the gate.
Yeah. And then they end with Penn State and then at Wisconsin at the end. So
I think I'm going to go.
I mean, there is some tough games.
I think the key game is North Carolina. I think you got to get started on the right foot, man.
North Carolina at the beginning of the season. Yeah, the week 0 game.
Yeah, I think
that's a week 0 game.
I think it's kind of huge.
Yeah, Minnesota and North Carolina on August the 29th is that game. I picked the Iowa game on September 21st as the key game for them. I have their win total set at 6.5.
That's about right.
Under.
That's about right. I just think.
I think they're in that 6 range.
There's a few games in there where they're going. Like I've said it over and over. You're going to have to You're going to have to compete to win some of those
Big
games,
Robert.
especially at home. So.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. All right, so we got Minnesota going bowling. Now we're going to talk about Nebraska. And we have got second year Matt Rule here. Where do you think Matt Rule takes this Husker team after stealing the quarterback here and keeping him at home? So the main thing that I'm going to say, they're kind of rolling the dice with a true freshman here. Nebraska is. What do you think with the true, having a true freshman run the show? Basically, it's going to be some ups and downs, I would think.
He's going to be. To me, Nebraska isn't expected to be one of the top teams this year, but there's a good chance that they could surprise some folks. If Nebraska does end up, like I said, surprising teams, a large part of it's going to be because of their defense. The defense side of the ball is the one thing you can count on with Nebraska. Now they're going to have, experience at offense this year that they've not had. The challenge to me is, can this offense match the defense? If the offense is able to match what the defense does, I think this team could be really, really good.
Let me just say this. I'm an older guy here, and I remember the 80s and 90s when Nebraska was really, really good. I remember Tom Osborne, and I remember those days. And I just want to say this: college football is more fun when Lincoln, Nebraska plays good football. I mean, there was a time, the last 10, 15 years, let's talk like it is, the last 15 years, everybody's pretty much thought that college football runs through the SEC and Alabama, but there was a time where it ran through Lincoln, Nebraska in the mid 90s. So I'm just going to say, offensively, they bring in the star, 5-star studded, prospect here, Dylan, and I'm not sure how he pronounces his last name. Do you know? Raiola. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. He was committed elsewhere, big name school.
Georgia.
And Georgia, yeah, big name school, committed there. And, he's from Nebraska, and they kept hitting him and kept hitting him and kept hitting him. And
his dad, Dominique, played at Nebraska.
Yeah, played at Nebraska, and he was committed to Georgia and committed for a while, and then late in the process, he flips. Big, huge get for Matt Rule here, but when you're putting all your eggs in the basket on a true freshman, I think you're going to see some ups and downs.
You are.
But
I'll say this.
Their offensive front should be better, and the true freshman's going to need them to be.
I'm going to say this, and this is a hot take, and people can go with where they want to with this, but if the offense can be average, Nebraska has a chance to slide into a couple of those spots in the college football playoff. I'm not exaggerating.
I'm not ready to go quite that far.
But I say that because of their schedule. Their schedule sets up for them.
Yeah, and we'll get to that.
And we'll get to that.
I'm not quite ready to say that on the defensive side of the ball. you seem to like their defense, so let's
I
talk
love
about
their
their defense.
I love their defense. Their defense is one of their biggest dynamic duos. You know, they've done that since the early '90s. You know, they've always had a defense. You know, they've always been hard nosed.
Their defensive line, all three of them are back. They play a 3, and all three of them are back on the defensive line.
Yeah, I mean they're
including their anchor Nash,
yep.
Hutmacher.
Yep. Hutmacher, yep.
What a name.
Yeah, that's
330 pounds. Ty Robinson, Jamari Butler.
Yeah,
that's their front three.
They got a fun defense to watch. And that's like I said, if their offense can penetrate and you know, be just average with the schedule and the favorability they got on their schedule, I think this team has a chance to do some really special things this year.
The one knock I will say on their defense from last year is they didn't create enough turnovers.
They did not.
That would be one of my knocks on the defense.
And I think that put them a lot of times in bad positions. To lose games.
You know, to improve on the defensive side of the ball this year, I think you got to create some turnovers for that defense. Key to the season. I mean, first, I'm going to say 2. First, they had 31 turnovers last year.
Yeah, it was pretty remarkable.
They did. They didn't create them, but they had 31 turnovers last year. That's a lot.
They played a lot.
Okay?
And they played a lot of close games. And they played a lot of close games.
That's nearly 3 a game, over 2.5 a game. You know, you got to cut that out. I mean, if you're going to have a great season here, you've got to cut that out, and then you got to complete some passes. And I know they're bringing in the star guy here, so hopefully they can complete more than 50% of their passes, because that's about where they were last year, 51, something like that. So hopefully they can complete a little bit more of their passes. That's my 2 keys. I think it's on the offensive side of the ball. What do you got?
I think you put the nail on the head on it. That's the
all
key.
Right, key player. I'm going to give you one that I don't think anybody is going to say, but I think he's going to be pretty key for them, and that is Gabe Ervin. He is a junior running back on this team. And last year, one of their reserve quarterbacks led the team in rushing. 407 yards. That can't be the case here with this team. They've got to find a running back here. I think Gabe Ervin is the leader to be that guy.
My key game is Illinois. And I say that, and everybody's probably going to think, well, why ain't you saying Coach Prime in Colorado when they come to town? The people's going to be watching that. But
I think it is, but okay.
Well, I think they have to win that if they're going to be any good. I do. But Illinois is the Big Ten opener. And you can't lose that game if you're going to be much improved.
Yeah,
and if you win that game,
the way Nebraska lost that game, the Colorado game last year,
it has to be in the back of their minds.
You have to get this win. You can't let Prime get you again. I mean, you just can't.
No, you can't. You win this game, and with the schedule, like I said, I was telling you earlier, the schedule is so favorable. 7-0 is not 7-0 is not out of the realm, because you're 7-0 going to Ohio State, and you're probably playing for a big game situation that you haven't had probably in 5 or 6 years.
Well, let's look at it. They start with UTEP at home, Colorado at home, Northern Iowa at home, Illinois at home. Then at Purdue, Rutgers at home, open date, at Indiana, and then at Ohio State, UCLA at home, open date, at USC, Wisconsin at home, and at Iowa is how they close out the year. They do miss Michigan, Oregon, Penn State, Washington. So there's a few teams that they do miss. I agree with you when, if you can get a few of these early games and get some momentum here, I mean, could they be 7-0 going into the Ohio State game?
It's quite possible.
I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, but you gotta win a few of these key games up, early here to be able to do that. So, all right, my over and under. I've actually got them set at 7. I got it set at 7.
I got them at 8. I just think that they're going to be much improved, and their schedule benefits them, and it's favorable. And I think they'll get to 8.
8 wins would be a really good season and a rise from where they were last year. And I think that would be I think Nebraska fans would be happy with an 8-win season this year.
I think they would too.
All right. Northwestern, we're moving to Northwestern. Northwestern had some difficult times the last couple of years. Played with an interim coach that they turned into the regular head coach now. Last year, after Pat Fitzgerald was fired right before the season last year, where do you see? Are they still in a, I guess, complete rebuild here, or because he was there last year, do they have something to build on here for this year?
Well,
with Northwestern,
they're coming off a scandal. Things were just imploding. Everybody thought, well, the 2023 season would be just they'd forget about it and it'd be a lost year. It wasn't. Let's just, they did lose some games earlier against Rutgers and Duke, but then they just went full Northwestern.
Yeah,
let's just say they won some games.
They ran the ball, and they pretty much gave up passing. I mean, honestly,
they did. They ran the ball. They did things that I didn't think they could do because they was going into the year with a lot of ifs and ands and buts, and the running backs are good enough, I think, to do really good. Joseph Heeman is another.
They got a new offensive coordinator.
They do. Zach Lujan, I think that's how you say his name.
Yeah.
Which they did lose Anthony Tice. He went to Ohio. He was their second leading rusher. So I feel like the quarterback situation's got to be better.
Well, they brought in a guy. Do you know who they brought in?
Yes, I know. Ryan Helinski.
Oh, that's not the guy I was thinking.
Oh, was you talking about?
They brought in Mike White. You remember Mike White that played at Vanderbilt?
Right. Mike Wright, yeah.
Right, yes.
Yep.
That played at Vanderbilt. He was at Mississippi State last year, but he is transferred into Northwestern here. I think it'll be interesting to see if he does his job.
He's actually going to have an opportunity here, I think. And
yeah,
two of their top 3 receivers return. Bryce Kurtz is back. I feel like, the tight ends are really good. That's where I go to the defense. The defense carried the team, and they took the ball away. the bending don't breaking type stuff. Their linebacker play was good. Xander Mueller, to me, is the star of the defense. He had 110 stops last year and 3 interceptions. I think he's a really big key to the year. Adrian Hubbard returns. He's the team's best pass rusher, I think. They get Carmine Bastone, I think, and Najee Story. They return. The biggest thing to me, the secondary took a big shot. Rod Hurd, I think he left for Notre Dame.
Right.
Garnett Hollis left. Jaheim Joseph, they went to West Virginia. So the defense needs to do what they did a year ago, and that's create more turnovers. And they did a really good job of that a year ago.
Well, that's actually one of my keys is the turnovers. They created a bunch of turnovers. Last year, I think, and it like those turnovers allowed them to have wins last year, later in the year as well. They were coming off of a 1-11 season in 2022. That's why I say there's actually maybe a little bit of something, a promise here of something to build on for this Northwestern team. I feel like. So who's your key player?
Mike Wright. I think,
Mike Wright. I don't know why I said White. Right. Yeah.
For me, I just feel like he was brought in to be the guy. And that's big for him because there was times where he looked really good and then he got set on the bench and now he's getting an opportunity to do something.
He's been in QB battles just about everywhere he's been.
Everywhere he's went, yeah.
And he's played some and played good, and then a guy would come in and play some and play good, and so I mean, he's never really had the keys per se.
Right.
You know what I'm
saying. To the Pontiac, he's always been the passenger. And
well, I mean, he's had a spare key and can hop in when somebody's not using it or something.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? But he's never had the set of keys, and I feel like here at Northwestern, that might be what he can get here. So I agree with you on that for him. I think it's a good spot for him.
My key game, I have to say Duke. Northwestern, to me, is not great at getting off to good starts. They've always kind of had early bugs.
Right.
Now the first game they play Miami, which that'll be tough. Because they're going to be much. It's winnable. They'll be much improved in the MAC, and then they play Eastern Illinois. So there's a good chance for them to be 3-0 for the first time since 2020, if they beat Duke. In which we don't know what Duke's going to be because they lost Mike Elko to Texas A&M, and there's a whole slew of different dynamics with Duke. So
looking at their schedule, they do play Miami University and Duke at home, Eastern Illinois at home, at Washington, open date, Indiana at home, at Maryland, Wisconsin at home, at Iowa, at Purdue, open date, Ohio State, at Michigan, and Illinois at home is how they finished the season. They missed Penn State and Oregon,
here's the thing,
USC, UCLA.
Here's the problem that they got. They go to Washington, Maryland, Iowa, and Michigan. And they're going to be tough. And you're probably not going to beat Ohio State. And Wisconsin and Illinois is going to be a little bit better. So
I'm going to do something. Here. I'm going to set this at 5.5. So can Northwestern go bowling? Do they have it in them? Can they actually get to 6 wins? Like I said, 2 years ago, they were 1-11. They lost their coach a week or two before the season last year.
They're going to have to steal. They're going to have to steal a couple of games. A few of those are at home. They're going to have to probably beat Maryland on the road. They're probably going to have to win Illinois, and they might even have to beat Wisconsin at home. And that's even at home, and that's still a tough game. So,
I mean, I'm going to say that they don't. I'm going to say that they fall short and don't go bowling here is what I'm going to say. But I think it is within the realm of possibilities to at least ask and talk about. So I thought I would put it at that and at least have a conversation about it. All right. Ohio State. The Ohio State. Yeah. Better put that in there. All right.
Yeah.
Now, I got to bring up a stat as we are talking about Ohio State here. Okay. So I got to bring this up. Ryan Day, there has been a lot of talk in the offseason. If he don't win Michigan, is he going to get fired and all this? Okay. I got to bring that. Ryan Day, his overall record is 59-8. Okay? 59-8. Did y'all hear me? His record is 59-8. Okay? Now listen. The 8 losses, just take a listen. He lost to Missouri last year in the Cotton Bowl, 11-win team. He's lost 3 to Michigan, okay? He lost to an Oregon State team that won the Pac-12 championship, or not Oregon State, an Oregon team that won the Pac-12 championship. He lost to the 2020 Alabama team, and he lost to the 2019 Clemson team. So here's what I'm going to say to y'all. All 8 of those losses were to 10-plus win teams. All 8. That's an astonishing stat to me. He's 59-8, and all 8 of his losses have been to 10-plus win teams.
And yet he's still
every single one of them.
And yet he's still recruiting at the highest level.
But my thing is, people act like he should be fired. What? I mean, hello. I mean, wow. That is an absolute astonishing stat, if you ask me. So, beat Michigan or else, right?
That's pretty much it, I think.
Isn't that where we're at?
I'll say this about Ohio State, and you know, they was really good last year offensively. You know, their defense was elite, but they got to improve their offensive line play. Offensive line hasn't been really great. Ohio State great. They need to have the line go from really good to elite to, I think, to win a national championship.
Well, let me tell you one more quick little tidbit about Ohio State. In the college football playoff era since 2014, just how good Ohio State has been. If you could go back and every single year was a 12-team playoff, there's only one school that would have made it all 10 years in the college football playoff of a 12-team playoff. Not Alabama, not Clemson. It's Ohio State. It's the only team that would have made it all 10 years. it's Ohio State. That's how good they've been. And Ryan Day's been about half of that. Urban Meyer was about the other half. All right, let's get to offense, defense. Let's be honest, guys, they are loaded. This talent-wise, this team is loaded.
They're on par with Georgia as far as talent. It might be even better.
This team is absolutely loaded. Now, they just named Walker. It is Walker, right? Walker Howard. That's his first name, isn't it? Yeah. From the transfer from K-State. They just named him the starting quarterback within the last week.
Will Howard.
Thank you.
Yeah, Will Howard.
I knew it was wrong. I knew it sounded wrong when I said it. That's why I paused. Will Howard. Thank you. They just named him the starting quarterback from K-State. I know. I'm sorry. I said his name wrong. I apologize. But anyways. All right. So what do you think outside of that? I mean, Lord have mercy.
Offensive line needs to be improved. But I kind of want to – I mean, we can talk about offense all day long. But their defense is special.
Yeah, but wait a second. Before we go to defense, we also got to enter in Chip Kelly in the offense here as well. I mean,
it's
he
about,
left
to me,
a head coaching job at UCLA to come to be the offensive coordinator at Ohio State.
To take that year, Listen, I'm just going to be frank with you. Like, Ohio State's secondary is downright unfair. You know, they got Caleb Downs, they got Denzel Burke, Davis Igbodson. I can't say his last name. Igbodson. And then that's not even, you're adding Hancock returns. He's back there. Ransom, the transfer. I think he's a transfer from Alabama. If I'm not mistaken, he was
They absolutely
no. Lathan Ransom ain't a transfer. It's Caleb Downs that was a transfer from Alabama.
From Bama. Yeah.
That secondary to me is the most talented secondary in the country, in my opinion.
Michigan's got a good one too, but
they do.
Ohio State. I mean, Caleb Downs is fantastic. I mean, just
fantastic. That's my player to watch. He was fantastic at Alabama. He done a lot of great things at Bama, and now he gets to do it on the big stage again with Ohio State. They're going to be really, really good.
This Ohio State team is absolutely loaded. The defense is going to be nasty. I wanted to give you, as far as a key to the season, I mean, let's be honest. One of the only weaknesses at all, and I'm not saying it's a weakness, is offensive line. The offensive line has to do a little bit better here.
Well, they got to be better. They got to be better, I think, if they want to be elite.
But I will say this: I'm not sold on Will Howard from Kansas State.
Yeah, but look at who he's got. Look at his weapons.
Well,
who has a back? Let me just say this: who has a backfield? Judkins and Henderson.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
And then you got 5-star Jeremiah Smith, and then you got Abuka. He returns.
Yeah,
and that's not to mention their tight end play. Like, this offense, to me, it is just unfair, ungodly amount of talent. And you put that behind a quarterback, he's going to do some things.
Be honest. They're really, really damn good. That's all I'm going to say. All right. Key player. Is it Howard?
It's Howard, I think. But I think the play around him is going to be good enough to overlook a lot of the weaknesses and errors, I think.
But I'm going to keep a guy to keep your eye on all season long is Caleb Downs. I'm just going to say it. All right, key game for them. Is there any other game that they need to play outside of Michigan?
Probably not.
I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, it has to be that, right? Yeah. I know that's the last game of the year and all, but still. All right, let's take a look at their schedule. Let's start out with Akron and Western Michigan at home, open date, Marshall at home, at Michigan State, Iowa at home. They do play at Oregon. That is a very important game in the season for them and for the Big Ten as well. The open date, Nebraska at home, at Penn State, Purdue at home, at Northwestern, Indiana at home, and Michigan at home. Yeah. So that is a look at their schedule. The at Oregon game is just as important, I think, as the Michigan game, but I know that Ohio State fans will tell you that it's the Michigan game. All right, they're over and under 10.5 wins is what I got it set at, John. Do they go over or under 10.5 wins? That means they got to win either Michigan and Oregon to get to 11.
I think they go over it. I think that they are probably going to win the title, I think, this year. I just think they got to beat Michigan first.
Got them at 11-1 as well. So yep. I think they're that good, and they are going to
that schedule is
playoff.
To me, that schedule's cake. I mean, unless you look at the Oregon game and the Michigan game. Oregon game's going to be a tough one at Oregon, but if they can get past that one, I think they're smooth sailing to Michigan.
Oh, I think so as well. Speaking of Oregon, Oregon is the next team that we're going to talk about. Oregon is loaded as well. I think those are the two top teams in the Big Ten. I really do. And Dan Lanning is killing it in getting talent to Oregon, just to be honest.
Always has been.
I mean, he's absolutely killing it, honestly, and doing a heck of a job. Now, here's what I want to say about Oregon. And I said this to some friends the other day. Oregon has won a shit ton of games without ever really winning the big one. They've only been to the college football playoff one time the very first year, 2014. That's it. They've won Pac-12 titles. They've won, but they've never completely climbed the mountain. They hadn't even been to the college football playoff since 2014, and only once. So they've done a lot of good.
And they play. They played for the title. They played for the title in 2010 against Auburn, but they ended up losing that one. So
right.
But
and
that was
during the title in 14.
But that was during the BCS era.
BCS era, yes.
So I think he can. I mean, this might be the most loaded wide receiver room that I've seen Oregon have. They get Dylan Gabriel from Oklahoma, which Dylan Gabriel is going to be. I mean, he's the guy.
Here's my guy. I'm going to say this right as we're talking, since you brought him up. Heisman potential here with Dylan Gabriel. Under Dan Lanning.
And he's a lefty.
Yes. I'm telling you, everybody else has been talking about some other people for Heisman. Dylan Gabriel is the guy to watch. You heard it here from Mr. Brad. All right. I'm telling you.
And that's Dylan not to and to me, that's where we go to defense now with them. Like their offense is going to be great, but that ain't even to mention their back end on their secondary. Malik Muhammad might be one of the best cover guys in the country. DJ Ungualale. I think that's how you say it. Ungualale. His brother's on the front four. He has a brother. And they're going to be really good.
He's a sophomore, yeah. Oh, I really, really like this Oregon team. Matter of fact, I have went back and forth which one of these last two teams I think is going to win this. And I lean one day this way and I lean one day that way. I really like both of these teams. I mean, the secondary here is going to be good. The linebackers are going to be good. My thing is on defense, moving into the Big Ten, they're used to a passing league where, they have to, and I think it's going to be a little bit different here with some smash mouth football. So I think that's going to be a key for them.
Let me get my plug in real quick. Charger since it's been so long.
Hold on. All right. To adjust here. I think that's going to be a key to adjust. DJ's brother, I have as a key player. He's a sophomore linebacker. Mateo Ugale. I don't know how he pronounces all that. So that's all I can tell. But that's who I have as a key player. Key game. I mean, I think it's the Ohio State game. The Ohio State game. Did you notice I said the?
Yeah. I think it is because their schedule sets up pretty good for them. Now, they do have the annual Oregon State game. They got to keep that game.
And they have a date at Michigan later on, which is tough.
And isn't it weird to see Oregon State play early in the year than they do at the end of the year? Like, it's a little odd.
Yeah. It's totally different.
But I think the Ohio State game is crucial because if you win that game, you're sitting pretty good to get to the college football.
You've got the upper hand in the Big Ten if you win that game.
Which to me, that whole weekend, if you haven't looked at the slate, you need to look at the slate that weekend. That you might not want to leave your couch.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Their schedule, they play Idaho. They play Boise State second game. Boise State's not going to be no slouch here. They've got a lot of talent on offense as well. At Oregon State, the third game. Open date at UCLA, Michigan State at home, Ohio State at home, Purdue, Illinois at home, at Michigan, Maryland at home, at Wisconsin, open date, and then they end with Washington at home. That's their schedule. Don't miss a whole lot. They missed Penn State and USC of the big teams in the Big Ten. They don't miss a lot. So I think this Oregon team, when you look at the schedules, compare the schedules between Ohio State and Oregon, I think Ohio State's got a little bit of advantage. If they can win the Ohio State game. So the winner of that game, that's why I said the key game is the Ohio State game for them. So 10 wins. That's what I got their season set at is 10 wins.
I got it at 11. Under. I think they got a shot to go to the championship game this year. But
I think they do as well. I think this team will win 10 or 11 games, and this team will be in the college football playoff.
And that's depending on, teams like Georgia, Alabama, the top dogs in front of them. So
I think this team will be in the college football playoffs. All right, now let's get to Penn State. And let's talk about Penn State for a few minutes here. So, James Franklin, here is another guy. We talked about Iowa early. I talked about Oregon, who has rarely ever got to or won the big game, the big game. Here's another guy, James Franklin, got a tremendous record, but he's like 3-21 against top 10 teams, or 3-22 as a coach. Can never beat Michigan, can never beat Ohio State.
Well, they was there. And,
can they get there?
Well, you got to think 2020 they was there. 2001, they had that 21-5 run where they ended up losing to Ole Miss, which I didn't think really mattered much. But the end of the day, it's just simple. They have a Michigan and Ohio State problem, and it's a downfield passing problem. They just can't get the ball to their guys. Quarterback play has been very average, and I'm not saying Ohio State has been bad.
Against those two teams. It's only against those two teams. That's it.
It is. That's it. Yeah. And I'm saying, and what I was saying, I wasn't saying Ohio State was having a downfield problem. I was saying Penn State does against these teams. Against Michigan, Ohio State, they just simply cannot move the ball. And even Indiana moves the ball on these teams. And what does that come back to? Does that
even Indiana?
I mean, does that come back to coaching, or is it just?
It's funny the way you said it. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm saying,
Indiana.
I'm just saying.
Oh me, that got me laughing. I'm sorry. But here's the deal. 3 years ago, we had some of these same questions about Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. He could never get up. He could never win the big one against Ohio State, and he always got knocked out of the college football playoffs. And we had these same question marks about Michigan and Jim Harbaugh 3 years ago. Now, can Penn State do that? Are they there? Can they climb that mountain? But here's my next question. If they can make the 12-team college football, will it matter? Will Penn State be 100% on board and the fans be on board if Franklin can get them to the college football playoff? Whether they lose to Michigan and Penn State or not. If they're 10-2 and can get in.
I think it helps.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it's going to dissolve things that has happened in the last 2 to 3 years, 4 years that they've had opportunities to really go and do the things that they want to do. But my God, man, you got to fix your offense. I'm sorry.
I know there's a lot of knock on him, but the man, just like I said with Iowa, the man wins 10 games a year. I mean, pretty much.
If your offense cannot, contribute and you can't get better quarterback play out of Eller, well,
let's be honest. He was better than a lot of people think he was.
He was.
He just struggled in those 2 games.
Yeah. And it don't get no easier starting out the gate going to.
He had 2,600 yards. He had 25 touchdowns, only 2 picks. I mean, that's not a bad year, guys.
No, it's not. It's really not. It's just those 2 teams. He just can't get over the hump.
Now, offense, there's only one starter back on the offensive line. Does that scare you a little bit for this Penn State team?
Yeah, a little bit. You know, they lost Keandre Lambert-Smith to Auburn. That was a pretty big loss. Tyler Warren is a really good tight end. I think he's going to be a big.
And they have a good running back rotation as well.
They do. They might have one of the best running back tandems in the country.
Tandems, yeah. Singleton and Allen together.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
Yeah.
Now Julian Fleming will be a big plus out on the outside. He'll be really good catching the ball and whatnot. Now their defense. Abdul Carter, is he ready to blow up?
Yep. I mean, he could be. He absolutely.
No, they got a good secondary. Their secondary is really good. They got Kevin Winston. He was really good. Led the team last year with tackles. Jalen Reed. Their corner. I feel like their corner situation isn't a question mark. They got AJ Harris from Georgia, and they got Cam Miller. Penn State's all about defense. They're going to keep you in games. They're going to make sure that you're hanging around at the end of the game.
Even James in those Franklin does a great job playing tough defense. He always has. Even at Vandy, he did.
And even with, the Michigan-Ohio State games, the defense hung in the game for quite a while. It was just the offense could not score, and they couldn't get enough.
Well, I mean, that's got to be a key to the season. When you're playing Ohio State and Michigan, just complete some passes, man. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, it's simple.
I mean, it should be pretty simple. It's catch and throw, I mean, just complete some passes because their offense is just non-existent when they play those games for some reason. Key player, you think it's Fleming?
Mm-hmm.
On the outside, Julian Fleming, wide receiver.
Yep.
I mean, I think it really, really could be. I think he'll be a key player for him. Who you got as what game do you have as a key game?
I got USC. They have that schedule with West Virginia starting out. Then they play Bowling Green. Then they have open day, Kent State at home, Illinois home, UCLA home, at USC, open date, at Wisconsin, Ohio State home, Washington home, at Purdue, at Minnesota, and Maryland at home. And where did Brad go? I lost him.
I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. I was just kind of messing with you, making sure you was awake.
Oh, goodness. Oh, goodness.
Right. So you think the key game is the USC game?
Yeah,
USC.
I think it's I think it's the key game of the year. I think, especially with the Morgantown game. I think that's a key game early with West Virginia, but I don't think that's really the biggest game. They played USC 3 times since 2000. USC's won all 3. I think they need to get over the hump.
Okay. Here's what I'm going to do. So if they get USC and, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set their win total at 10. Can Penn State get to 10 and make the college football playoff?
I think 10's there.
I mean, they don't play Michigan. Did y'all hear me? They don't play Michigan. That's huge for them. Now, they do play at USC, but they don't play Michigan.
That's a plus.
So I think think 10 wins and getting to the college football playoff is a possibility here. That's what I got them at, to be honest. Now, let's get to Purdue. Purdue, to be honest with you, I mean, they could have a little bit of a down year, rough year here. I think Purdue could. Second year coach here for them. What do you think, John, when it comes to Purdue? Braum left a couple of years, now second year. They're in the second year with a coach here.
Well, I mean, they got a good offensive coordinator in Graham Harrell. I think, with him, yeah. I think they can be really, really good and special. Offensive line has to be as good as it was last year. It was great.
They went 4-8 last year, though. Let's be honest.
Yeah, they went real good. The passing game was not – it was okay, but it wasn't the greatest. They lost Deion Burks. He went to Oklahoma. TJ Sheffield is gone. Yassine left for South Florida, their other receiver. So I'll say this. Purdue's in a total rebuild. And it's just going to take some time to get it to be back to where Braum had it. Braum, left it in a good spot, but, with the way the transfer portal moves around now, guys go everywhere and move around different places, and that's been the case for Purdue, and they've just been hit pretty hard.
But here's the deal. On defensive side of the ball, they were the worst passing defense in the last year.
Yeah, they allowed 30 points per game, which was really, really bad, inconsistent.
And USC and Oregon and Washington are coming to the Big Ten, and they're already the worst. That's not a good sign. I'm sorry to say it.
Well, that's where I go with our keys to the season. Like, the pass defense has to be night and day better. Like, you cannot give up that much yardage and expect to win many football games, especially with the new look Big Ten, and especially with Oregon coming in and USC and
Washington.
All these teams that move the football
out there is elite.
And as long as the offense, to me, is doing everything that they need to do, I think the defense will be good. But the defense doesn't have to be great. It just has to be average. And I think that needs to improve this year.
Key player?
I think it's Nyland Green, the transfer from Georgia. I mean, he's really good. He's got all the skills, to be a factor and starting in this backfield. He was really sought after in the portal. There's a lot of teams after him, Kentucky, a lot of SEC schools, Big Ten. Now, I will say losing Skuriton to Texas A&M is going to hurt him a little bit. He was a big part of their front. I think he was one of the hottest players out of the transfer portal, and I think losing him. Now, I thought, if they added him back, I thought maybe they could add to the defense a little bit and be a little bit better this year, which they're still going to be better, but they're not going to be as good without him, I don't think, up front.
Yeah. All right, my key game, they lost to Nebraska last year. This time it's at home. It's September 28th. I think that's a key game for them at home, is that Nebraska game.
I think it is, but they play Indiana State, Notre Dame at home. Both of those are home. At Oregon State, Nebraska home. At Wisconsin, at Illinois, Oregon at home. Open date, Northwestern at home. At Ohio State, Penn State home. At Michigan State, and at Indiana. I got their win at 5. I just that schedule, man. even though Notre Dame's at home, that's still Notre Dame's.
That's what I got is 5. I got the wins set at 5.
Notre Dame's will be much improved.
Oh yeah, I think Notre Dame possibly could sneak into the college football playoff. I really do.
They're in that discussion.
They're in the discussion for sure. So I think 5 wins, and to be quite honest with you, they went 4-8 last year. I think that would be a positive direction for them if they can get to 5 wins. All right, Rutgers. This is a team that is not nearly as bad as many people would like to think. They were like 5-1, 6-1, or something at one point last year. They kind of remind me of Mark Stoops.
Yeah. Well, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get a good running game.
Listen,
and sometimes
I'm a Kentucky fan, but I'm going to be honest with you. Rutgers kind of reminds me of Kentucky. I mean, they really do. They start out 5-1, 6-1, 6-2, then they wind up 7-6 or whatever.
Well, if you look at their offense, this is going to be their best receiving core they've had in quite a while. They get Christian Dramel back, Dymere Miller. He was a transfer, I think, from Monmouth. Nassim Brantley will be dangerous. But the ground game's going to carry the load. Kyle Monagai, I think that's how you say his name. He'll be back. Samuel Brown, he's a key backup. The offensive front was probably the best in the Big Ten in allowing sacks. They was pretty good. And I think this team has a really good chance at surprising some people. And,
I do as well. Absolutely. I mean, on the offensive side of the ball for Rutgers, I mean, like you said, you talked about it some here. I mean, they have some pieces on the offensive side of the ball, and they have pieces on the defensive side of the ball, to be quite honest. With offense, you kind of know what you're going to get from Rutgers.
You are. You're going to get a good run game, and they just need to do a little bit more through the air,
Yeah. I mean,
now their defense, to me, they always keep their team in games. They was 16th in the nation overall and allowing just 21 points a game a year ago. And I think that will be even better.
They played really good defense.
Now, they did lose Deion Jennings. He was their real good linebacker. Muhammad Toure is back. Tyrene Powell returns. Their defense is going to be probably their best unit, I think. But I think their offense has a really good chance to be even better too.
You know what I like about their defense? And if you never watched them play, you probably wouldn't know this. But their secondary is hard hitting. If you watch them play, they come after you in the secondary. I like watching their secondary.
Yeah, they come after you.
They hit you hard. They let you know they're there, and I like that. It's hard mouth football. Tough football when you go play Rutgers. All right, so key to the season for them. It's got to be passing the ball some, right?
Well, they failed to hit 50% of their passes 9 times last year. Like you got to improve throwing the ball. You got to make better decisions throwing the ball. I just think overall they just need to throw the ball better and be better. And I think that's where the quarterback comes into play.
That means a key player. That means a key player's got to be the quarterback, and
they went through.
You try it. I don't even.
I can't. Ethan Kalekamanis, I think that's how you say it. I don't know how to say that, but they went through.
He's the one that beat out Gavin Wimsatt, who transferred to Kentucky.
Well, and the thing is, Rutgers went through almost 8 quarterbacks. I mean, at some point, you're going to have to, figure this part of the equation out because it's got to improve.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean,
tremendously.
8 quarterbacks is insane. You shouldn't even have 8 quarterbacks. Okay.
No, it's.
I mean, honestly, let's talk about it for a minute. You shouldn't even have 8 quarterbacks. Okay.
No,
that's ridiculous.
My key game is at Virginia Tech, and I say that because somebody had mentioned earlier that one of the games was UCLA, but I think it's Virginia Tech because the schedule sets up really well for them. They play Howard at home, Akron at home, open day at Virginia Tech, home against Washington, at Nebraska, home against Wisconsin, home UCLA, at USC, open day at Minnesota at home, at Maryland, Illinois at home, and at Michigan State. There's a really good chance that Rutgers could get 8 or 9 wins out of the schedule.
I got it set at 7. I got their win total set at 7.
Because the end part of the schedule is very favorable. Even though
if they
have that.
If they can get that Virginia Tech game, they might get 8 or 9 wins out of this.
Yep. And Virginia Tech is going to be much improved too. So
yes.
It's not going to be Tech. And it's not going to be a cakewalk. So
Inner Sandman.
Yep. That's all you got to say.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
I got them at 8. I think I put them at 8.
At 8? Okay. All right. So the next one we're going to talk about is a new one here. It's UCLA. Here is my hot take on UCLA.
I knew this was coming.
I think, I'm just going to be honest with you, I think they're out of their comfort zone here at UCLA. You could tell that by their press conference and everything that's going on with them. They're in LA. I don't know. Anyways, I'm not even going to say all that. But here's my hot take.
Did you know we're in LA?
All right. Did you know they're in Los Angeles, by the way? Anyways.
Yes.
All right. So my hot take is this. I think within 3 years, UCLA is going to want to be back out on the West Coast. Yeah. I don't think they are going to enjoy or like the travel. They have been used to being a kingpin in the Pac-12, being one of the top dogs in the Pac-12, and they are going to be a middle to the bottom row team in the Big Ten, I think, for a few years. And I predict that UCLA will want out. The only thing that might keep them in is the money. But I think within 3 years, they're going to want to go back to the West Coast. That's my hot take.
What do you think? What's crazy to me is they haven't had a 10-win season since 2014. That's quite a while.
Yeah.
We're almost reaching maybe a decade. It might be a decade.
It is.
And
this is 2024. So.
I mean, they did get Eric Bieniemy. He's their offensive coordinator. They got
Eric's sleeping with a Bieniemy.
Yeah, from the Chiefs. If people don't know who he is, he actually played out west. He played for Colorado at running back.
Okay, if you guys don't know Chris Berman, I'm going to have to cross you off my list, okay? So Eric Bieniemy, that was his nickname. Berman always had these famous nicknames. Eric sleeping with the Bieniemy. It was one of my favorite nicknames. And he is now at UCLA. And I had to get that in here. I had to. I just had to. Y'all have no idea.
Well, and the thing too with Eric Bieniemy and Deshaun Foster, they're going to want to run the football and make it UCLA football again. UCLA to me is running the football, managing the clock, and just flat out running over top of you.
Ground and pound, yeah.
And we haven't had that from UCLA as of recent, and it needs to be much, much improved.
I agree with you. That is pretty much on the offensive side of the ball. Eric, sleeping with a Bieniemy, is the offensive coordinator. I can't. Every time I hear his name, I hear him say it. I can't help it. I do the prime time every time I hear Dion. I hear it in my head. I love Chris Berman. You have no idea. I wanted to be Chris Berman. You have no idea.
Yeah,
but
you're
anyway.
not. You're not though. You're not though.
I wanted to be Chris Berman so bad. You have no idea. All right, defense. On the defensive side of the ball,
they got a lot of help to me in the secondary. Transfer portal really worked out for them. That's the thing about this transfer portal. Like, you're just not getting starters. You're getting backup guys that are sliding into these starter positions, and you're getting them from big schools. Like UCLA got a couple of guys from Oregon, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech. So that's one good thing about this portal is it improves your overall skill.
They should have good linebackers. They should have good linebackers as well.
Very good.
Very good linebackers here at UCLA on the defense. So it's going to kind of come down, I think, to the the front, the defensive front here for them on just how stout this defense is.
My key to the season is, you're the second worst team in the nation in the red zone, and you need to score when you have the opportunity. They just could not get that done last year.
Well, having said that, and you're going to think I'm crazy, but a key player here is going to be the darn kicker. You're talking about scoring when they have an opportunity. They were 8 of 17 in field goals last year. You get down there and you miss over 50% of your field goals, put some points on the board. You can't have that crap. So, whoever this sophomore kicker is, Baghetti or whatever his name is, I don't know what the hell his name is. Martin, I don't know. But if he's not any better, he needs to go back to Baghdad. I mean, wait a second. I didn't say that right.
Oh,
I have no idea if that's from. Okay, I have no idea. And I'm sorry, that's a bad joke. All right. It was just a joke, guys. Just a joke. All right.
Just a joke. Yeah.
goodness.
They play at Hawaii. Open day. Then they play Indiana at home. At LSU. Oregon at home. At Penn State. Minnesota at home. At Rutgers. Open date. Nebraska at home. Iowa home. At Washington. USC and Fresno State at home. And two of those, the last two are home. Good luck, UCLA. That's all I can tell you.
Okay. Is it at LSU? I mean, honestly.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
I mean, is the key game at LSU? Because
you're playing Indiana and then you're playing Oregon at home at Penn State.
And then at Penn State. I mean, or is it Minnesota at home? I mean, Minnesota at home is going to be a key game for them.
Yeah.
On October 12th.
Yeah. And that Rutgers game will not be easy either.
I done cracked you up, hadn't
I? You tore me up, man. Oh, goodness.
All right. So I have their over-under set at 6 wins. Can they get to 6 wins?
5.
Yeah, that's where I think they'll be at.
That schedule's just, and it's going to be tough for them this year.
All right, USC.
Oh, goodness.
What are we doing here with Lincoln Riley? That's what I want to know. Because does Lincoln Riley figure out that there are three sides of football, or is he just worried about offense?
I think, he's going to have an improved defense this year. I'll say this. Their talent up front and their D-line isn't bad. Like, they got Bear Alexander, Elijah Hughes, Jamil Muhammad. He returns at one end. But I'll say this as we go to their offense. Miller Moss had better be good.
There's no Caleb Williams.
There's not. And here's my biggest thing is you start out the year – you don't start out with just anybody. You start out with LSU right out of the gate against a pretty good LSU team that's going to be probably in the hunt for the college football playoff.
And they just named Miller Moss the starting quarterback, I think, yesterday.
Yeah, and now they did lose a couple of their backs, but they did get Woody Marks from Mississippi State. They got Quentin Joyner. They'll get their yardage. Woody Marks is a really good back. He played at Mississippi State for a while. We remember his time when he played against Kentucky at times. This should be a fun group. But
offensive line, they should be pretty good on the offensive line.
But like you said, this no Caleb Williams, and you're going to have to be great. Well, I wouldn't say you have to be great. You got to at least be halfway decent.
Branch is a potential star. Okay,
he is.
Zachary, I think is his name. Is that right?
Yeah.
He's a he is lightning fast and is a potential star.
But here's the problem that I had an issue with USC last year. When they scored and they won, they done really great. But when they could not score and they faced a defense that was better than their offense, they just looked awful, and the defense couldn't stop them. Like, it was vice versa, back and forth. And to me, that's going to have to improve. Now, they did bring in DeAntone Lynn, as a new defensive coordinator. To me, they're not strong in certain positions that they was last year. The secondary should be better, even though they lost Kalen Bullock. They got some young guys.
Alexander's got to make his presence known on defense. I mean, he just does.
And I feel like that's the key to the season. Bring back the turnovers, the takeaways, what USC used to do. Now,
when you got Elijah Hughes, Jamil Muhammad, and Barry Alexander, I mean, on your defensive front, you've got to make some noise with that.
Now, I will say –
and you can't get slaughtered passing the ball down the field with these guys. I mean, you just can't do it.
No. And at the same time, you can't do what they did a year ago on defense either, giving up big plays every single play. Like, you at some point, you got to make stops, and USC just did not do that a year ago. They didn't even do it in 2022. Like, they haven't been good defensively probably in – like, really good defensively.
The whole time probably, Lincoln Riley's been there.
They've not been good defensively, no.
No.
My top my top key player, I think, is Jamil Muhammad. I feel like he has to be disruptive. I think it starts up front, generating pressure. They just could not generate pressure whatsoever at times. They struggled trying to get pressure to the quarterback, and I think that's where they need to start getting better at.
Well, so another defensive side key is they got to create more turnovers.
Do.
Like in 2022, they were a little better at it. And last year, I mean, they just basically stopped creating turnovers, it seemed, for a part of the season. And they have to be able to create some turnovers because their defense gets rocked half the time. So being able to create that turnover helps them out. So I think that is going to be a big key game.
It's Washington has to be. You know, you've lost to them the last 2 years. Now, Kalen DeBoer has now moved on to Alabama. I think it's LSU, but I do think they need to beat some of the rivals and the teams that they've lost to as recently, and I feel like this is one of them. And, you know, even though Kalen DeBoer left to go to Alabama, I think Washington. I still think Washington will be good, but I don't think they'll be on the level that they was a year ago. But that's a game you need to win. And
so LSU's right off the bat, looking at their schedule.
Well, and you get that, and you get the Washington. Actually, the Washington game's on the road, so that's still going to be a tough game either way.
Yeah, Utah State at home, open date at Michigan, Wisconsin at home, at Minnesota, Penn State at home, at Maryland, Rutgers at home, at Washington, open date Nebraska, at UCLA, and then Notre Dame at home. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, John. That's a tough schedule.
Yeah, it's pretty tough.
When you got LSU, Michigan, then you got Penn State, Washington, Notre Dame, then like UCLA, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Rutgers. I mean, that's a tough schedule. So here's my thing. I have their win total, John, set at 8.5. Do you think they go over or under?
I think it's over. I think it's at 8. Like, it stays at 8.
I'll be honest with you. I think it's under, and I think they go 8-4.
That's where I think
USC goes 8-4. That is a tough schedule for them, and I think USC goes 8-4 and is in that 5-6 range in the Pac-10.
Yep.
First year. I mean, Big Ten. The first year. Pac-10. It is the Pac-10.
Yeah. Now
with the teams in it, I'm gonna start calling it the Pac-10.
Yeah.
All right, Washington.
Let me give you this.
Two more teams here.
Let me give you this stat. Washington played for the national championship in the Final Four of the college football playoff. USC never got to experience that. Notre Dame, Texas, Florida, Oklahoma, Florida State, Tennessee, Penn State, Wisconsin, Miami, and Texas A&M never got there. But Washington got there. Yep. And they played for the national championship.
Yep.
And does that not tell you there's a few of those teams and names in there that have really dropped off the map and Washington's went by them? And I say that.
What Kalen DeBoer did at Washington the last 2 years with Michael Penix Jr. was flat amazing, to be honest. I don't think there was very few people that done a better job. I mean, maybe Jim Harbaugh, not even, I mean, and Kirby Smart, because he won a title. I mean, but, I mean, outside of them two, I think Kellen DeBoer, I mean, I talked about Ryan Day's record at 59-8. Kalen DeBoer's been better. I mean, the last couple of years. So, I mean, now he's not there anymore. And they're moving to the Big Ten.
Well, and
I do think you're going to see a bit of a slide, a little bit. But they still have a lot of talent, and I think this team is going to be a very good team.
My thing is, you lost a lot of your receiving core. Roma Dunze, Chicago. Jalen Pope went to New England. You had Jalen McMillan go to Tampa Bay. That combined for I think 3,000 yards a year ago. You lost Jack Westover from there. He went to Seattle. Then they lost Jeremy Bernard to Alabama, which he was a transfer.
But they bring in Jet Fish and they bring in Arizona's offensive coordinator, and Arizona had a good year last year.
And people don't know what Jed Fish walked into when he went into Arizona either.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, they also on the offense brought in a guy by the name of Will Rogers.
Yep.
Has done a little bit at quarterback under Mike Leach, just a little. Led the SEC 2 straight years in a row passing. So they're not going to slow down a lot on the offensive side of the ball. I do think they fall back a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be a massive amount or anything. Like you said, the receiving core lost a ton. The offensive line will probably still be pretty decent here. And then let's go to the defensive side of the ball for Washington. Maybe you've heard of Belichick, the name Belichick in
Steven
football.
Belichick.
So his son, Steven Belichick, is the defensive coordinator now at Washington. And Belichick, Patriots Belichick, is there and is helping out on the side and doing some stuff because he's not coaching this year. And I heard him say that he's there and he's going to help his son this season.
Yeah.
So just to give you guys a heads up on that, if you see Belichick on the side.
I think their biggest strength is going to be their linebacker core. Carson Bruner will be back. Tupatali will be back. So I think their strength to me is their linebacker. And they have enough talent in the secondary to be pretty good. They lost Jabbar Muhammad to Oregon. That was a really big loss. Jordan Shaw. But he's from Indiana. He comes in. So they should be pretty good on defense, but it needs to be at least a little bit better than it was a year ago. At times, they just gave up a lot of plays. The biggest
Elijah
problem,
Jackson should be a good corner.
That's why I say the key to the season is generate a pass rush. They gave up so many first downs last year. It was just they just got to improve because the offense is going to do what it does, but you got to make some. You got to be stingy on defense sometimes.
Well, so the key player for me, I'm just going to say his name again, Will Rogers. I think it's fifth-year senior Will Rogers. I really do. Transferring in from Mississippi State, graduated from there, had a 4-year career at Mississippi State, was the two-time SEC lead passing yard leader. He has thrown for over 12,000 yards, 94 touchdowns in 4 seasons, just 28 interceptions. With all of those passing attempts and all of those yards, I mean, he throws the ball 40 to 50 times a game. He has for Mike Leach down there at Mississippi State. I think he's going to be an absolute key player for this Washington team to continue their dominance.
My key game is Michigan. Washington should be 5-0. You bring Michigan back. You have a rematch of the national championship from a year ago.
That's going to be pretty good. That's going to be a good game to watch.
And it's at Washington. which Washington to me still has to face Iowa, Penn State, and Oregon on the road, and Indiana, which will be improved. But they should be 5-0 going into Michigan. And to me, that's a big game because I don't think Washington's going to win the Big Ten. I think they won't be as good as they was a year ago with Kalen DeBoer leaving. Now they'll be really good under Jeb Fish. Jeb Fish always has a really good plan. He turned Arizona around, but their schedule sets up like this: they play Weber State, Eastern Michigan home, Washington State home, Northwestern home. At Rutgers won't be a slap in the face, but it's a winnable game. Michigan at home, at Iowa, open day, at Indiana, USC home, at Penn State, UCLA home, open date, and at Oregon. The only real true test that they really miss is Ohio State.
I've got their over-under set at 8.
8, yeah.
For this year, 8.
What'd you say,
What do you
Lamar
think?
Jackson?
I think they go. I think so, yeah. I got their over-under set at 8. I believe that this team will go 8-4 this year in the Big Ten, first year.
That's fair.
So
this is our last one.
Yeah, our last one is Wisconsin, and with Wisconsin, I'm going to bring up a little stat here. So in the BCS era and the college football playoff era, in both eras, Wisconsin has the most wins of any team that did not make the BCS or the college football playoff. I just thought it was kind of – so we talk about Penn State not getting there. We talked about a few of these other teams not getting to the big one. Wisconsin is another team that has had a lot of wins but could never get to, the BCS, could never get to the college football playoff. Luke Fickell in his second year. Where do you think they go here?
Well, you start out with the offense. Like last year, it wasn't good. Running game was inconsistent. Passing game was bad. They just never could put it together. And that's not fair to Luke Fickell because, he had to come in and take over from Paul Christ's era and had to change a lot of things. They lost Graham Mertz to Florida. He was a big loss in their quarterback room. So their offense, to me, has to be much improved if they want to move forward. I remember a day when Wisconsin was just run. Ron Dane, Davis, all the great stellar running backs that Wisconsin has always had. And Wisconsin is known for running the football. Now, they passed some. They've had some really great receivers in the past. But Wisconsin is more known for running the football and grinding games out. And I feel like that's where they need to get back to.
Tyler Van Dyke, is he the guy to be able to get this passing game going?
I think he is. I think he's, the main guy, Now, he ain't going to run like the quarterback last year, but I feel like he'll crank it down the field a lot more. Problem with Tyler Van Dyke, and people don't realize, is his interception rate. You're going to have to quit throwing it to the other team. Like 12 interceptions. 12 interceptions.
That's not what you're supposed to do.
No, it was really bad last year for Miami. So it needs to be better. So and defensively,
Wisconsin needs to commit to run the ball a little more too.
Well, on the defense, it was effective, but it just wasn't what Wisconsin football normally is. The pass rush, they got John John Pice from William and Mary. He's a really good pass rusher. Jake Chaney should be really good. The linebackers should be really, really good. Problem with Wisconsin defense is stop letting quarterbacks just drive and get in their groove like they did last year. Like they allowed offenses to average 61% passes. And that's not going to win you football games. Yep. Especially when your offense is not that good. And which offense wasn't that good last year. And you gotta be better. And I think now I'm not going to say here and say Tyler Van Dyke's going to be football Jesus, as they call it in Notre Dame, but at the same time, at least I feel like he'll move the ball downfield and get some downfield throws.
I think he's a key player, though, for sure. Tyler Van Dyke
I think he's a key player for this program and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so key game.
Alabama. And I say this because they play Western Michigan, they play South Dakota, and then they play Alabama at home. And
that's
then they have
home too, right? That's a home game, right?
And they have an open date, and then they go to USC. Purdue at home, at Rutgers, at Northwestern, Penn State at home, at Iowa, open date, Oregon at home, at Nebraska, Minnesota. And I say that the Alabama game because with what they got coming in the second half of the year, they have the trip to Wisconsin, and then they follow that up with Alabama. To me, for Luke Fickell, this would be a monstrous win for his program. And, we've seen what he did at Cincinnati. We saw what he could do with them. This would be big. And I'm not saying Alabama's going to be the Alabama of Nick Saban.
Is that a flex if they can beat Alabama at home?
I think it is. Here's my problem, though, is if they do beat Alabama, they're going to say, well, that ain't the Alabama that was there with Saban.
Right.
And to me, that's not fair to say.
Yeah, but that's what people are going to say. So that's why that's a flex.
That's what they're going to say. But to be fair, he recruited all those guys, except the guys that Kalen DeBoer brought in by himself. Yeah. And
right.
To be fair, that wouldn't be fair to. But you know how fans are. That's what they're going to do.
Over under 7 wins. What do you think?
I think it's 7. I mean, that rough stretch towards the end of the year is pretty tough.
All right. So there you have it. We are at the end of 18 teams here for the Big Ten. Now, real quick, championship game and winner. Who do you think you have in the championship game? Remember, there is no divisions.
My championship game and winner, I got Ohio State and Oregon, and I got Ohio State winning the whole thing. I got to win the Big Ten.
I've got Ohio State and Oregon as well, and I have went back and forth with this. And sometimes I want to say Oregon, and sometimes I say Ohio State. I'm currently on the Ohio State bandwagon for this game, but gosh, I want to pick Oregon so bad.
Well, here's the thing you're going to have. Ohio State, Oregon's going to play early in the year. You're going to have a revenge game either way beyond this game. Like,
that's true.
One team's going to win, and then they're going to play each other again. And somebody's going to have a revenge game.
Sure.
And my player of the year,
I'm going Dylan Gabriel, and I know that's probably – I think Dylan Gabriel is going to have a fantastic season. I think that he is going to be – I look for Dylan Gabriel to be one of the 3 or 4 at the Heisman presentation. I'm not saying he's winning it, but I'm saying he's there. That's my sleeper choice is Dylan Gabriel. That not many people's talking about. Who you got?
I think I'm going to go Judkins from Ohio State. I think I think he's going to have a big year for Ohio State.
All right. How many teams? Whoops. I didn't change this from last time. Give me just a second. I will change that. That was the last time. I'm sorry. I forgot. Changed one. Now my computer's telling me my battery's running low. Yes, I know. All right, Big Ten. How many Big Ten teams make the new college playoff, 12-team playoff?
I think the most you're going to get is 2, I think.
See, I think 3. I think Oregon State and Washington are good grief. Oregon and Ohio State both make it. And I think Penn State gets in this time. I really do. I think
there's a good chance for them.
I think the Big Ten will see 3 teams in, and I mean, there is an outside chance that an Iowa or a Michigan make a 4th team. I'm not going to say that they can't get a 4th team. There's an outside chance they can, but my pick preseason is 3 teams. Now, real quick, Florida State, Georgia Tech on Saturday, open the season in Dublin. Pick me a winner.
FSU. But I will say that Georgia Tech will be much improved, especially with Brent Key, what he's doing with them, and Haynes King. They should be a lot more fun to watch this year, which they was fun last year, but they should be more. If Georgia Tech was going to win this game, this is the time to do it because it's a neutral game. You're going to have half and half fans, and you're going to have the spotlight on you nationally. I think to myself, what would happen if FSU lost this game? This would be really devastating right out of the gate.
All right, to close the show out, go to Home Field Apparel. Check them out. Use our code CSCast. You can also find that at greenvillesportsmedia.com. You can find the link to use. There's over 180 teams. And at the bottom, it's scrolling there. Follow College SportsCast on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, or there is our Twitter handles, X handles, right there on the screen. Go follow us. We would appreciate it. And we hope you enjoyed our Big Ten preview. Next week, we will do a group of 5. We'll do a group of 5 and independents. And we are not going to run through every single team. We're going to do about the top 3 that we think out of each one.
And we won't be attending Baghdad. Oh goodness!
Sometimes you got to make light of stuff, you know. Okay,
that was pretty good.
All right. All right. We will see you guys next time. Have a good night.
Have a good night.